When things aren't going quite so well in the practice, where do you start looking for the problems first? Um, Maybe it's something like this. You're in the exam room, you've done an amazing job just explaining the benefits of a new prescription to a guest about their glasses. And I've been there before. And as I've done this job of explaining the process, I have the tech come in, or the optical team member come in, and I do this amazing baton pass right in front of the patient in the exam room. And as they're walking down the hall, I hear the optical team member say something like, "Do you want to look at glasses today?" Or I'm walking through the administrative area in our practice, and I hear one of our team members talking to a guest who's just come in for their annual contact lens exam. "How many boxes of contact lenses do you want to buy today?" Or maybe there's a guest that's giving one of your team members a challenge that they need to figure out, and they're having a real tough time figuring it out what to do. So they come to you for advice. And when they come to you for advice, you just tell them what to do, and they move on. And then I wonder, are these the same challenges that other types of businesses face? Are you having these same experiences? Do you find yourself in situations kind of like this? And when you stop and think about it, like I stop and think about things, do you also start to realize that the problem with this has nothing to do with your team, that it's probably more likely you that's the problem? I don't know about you, but when I figured this out, it's really frustrating and it's humbling. Hi, I'm Ted McElroy, and welcome to a new 3-part series in the Vision of Leadership podcast called Coaching as Leadership. In this series, we're going to look at redefining leadership the way most successful businesses live it out, not through controlling or advising or rescuing, but through coaching. And I'm really excited we're going to have a chance to talk about this. So if you ask one of your team members this question, and this is actually one of my favorite questions to ask my team members, what is it that I do that drives you crazy? What do you think their answer is going to be? Well, my real issue is that I love to give answers to questions. I really just can't help myself sometimes. I've been like this since I was a kid. I can remember in class sitting in the room it's kind of on the edge of my chair, and the teacher was getting ready to ask a question, and my hand would shoot up, and I would, even before she would even get finished, or he would get finished asking the question, and I would blurt out an answer. And why would I do this? Because I had to prove that I had the answer, that I could be counted on to go in the right direction. And if I was wrong, which happened quite often, if you throw your hand up and start answering a question before you know what the answer is, or before the question's been asked, I felt shame. I felt stupid. I felt like a fool. But now if I was right, well, then it was worse. I mean, then I had this overwhelming pride. I was smart, I was fast, and I was necessary. And as a business owner, I really zeroed in on this skill. I mean, if a team member has a challenge, well, I have a solution. If there was something being done less than perfect, I had the perfect way to show them how to do it. And if there was an issue with a guest, I knew exactly what the answer was going to be. It was all like being a kid all over again, but the stakes were so much higher. I mean, if I messed up, and yet I just couldn't stop myself. It's like somebody would ask a question, and I would throw my hand up and say, I've got an answer. I don't even know what it is yet, but I cannot wait to hear what it's going to be. Do you find yourself there? Do you secretly enjoy, or maybe not so secretly enjoy, being the one who has all the answers? And do you feel like as a leader, you have to have all the right answers all the time to all the questions? This is exhausting. I mean, how tired are you of being the only person that anybody can count on? And it's kind of like an example I want to give you. So let's pretend that you call me and tell me that you have a flat tire. Well, before you can, again, going back to me having all the answers and jumping in, before you can really even tell me the whole situation, I've already picked up my phone and I've started calling Tifton General Tire. Now, what do you think the problem is here? What problem am I solving for? Do I have all the answers to make the right decisions? is this solution really helping you, or is it just to make me look good? Well, it's just making me look good, because what if you are just calling to tell me you're going to be late because somebody's already there to fix your tire, or you've got a car like mine and your car didn't come with a spare tire and you're trying to figure out what your next step should be. Or maybe you, for some reason, think that I know how to use the jack on your car, or you do want me to call Tifton General Tire. Or maybe you're just, a couple of minutes up the street and you're supposed to be coming here to meet with me, and I'm not doing anything anyway because I'm waiting for you. Come pick me up. You see, this is kind of how things work when we start just jumping in there and giving answers to the problems that our people have without knowing all the details, or just because we give advice all the time. So we're going to see how this plays out as we go through this process. Because advice giving is exhausting, we need to figure out some other ways to do it. So before we get there, let's talk about the situations that go into it. How do you feel when someone asks you for advice, or comes to you for advice, or you just give advice? I mean, for me, I go right back to third grade. I'm smart, I'm fast, I'm necessary, but in the end, I'm exhausted because it's all dependent on me, and it has to happen like right now. It can't wait. It's got to be in the moment. And this kind of thing is very reactionary. It's reactive, but it's also transactional, because it's more about what I feel like is the thing that needs to be done, and maybe not even the right situation. But it looks like this. You got a problem. You come up with a solution. You cause work to be created. You have a problem, solution, work gets created. Problem, solution, work gets created. But who's doing the work? I am. I'm the one that's doing the work. I'm having to figure out what the problem in the situation is, and I've already got stuff to do. I need to do what I need to be doing instead of trying to figure out everybody's problems. But the problem with this is, in the advice situation, as it is like this, it looks kind of needy. It's driven basically by the need to be needed. It's ego driven. Now, I need to disavow you on one thing. I mean, there are times when just answering a question is necessary, and giving advice is just necessary, or giving a directive is just necessary, because maybe there is only one solution, or maybe you don't need to get into a philosophical question about why you decided to put the omega-3s in the storage closet. Just tell them where you put it. You don't have to get into this whole big rigmarole of what went into that decision. But the problem with doing this is it's more of an overdeveloped habit, and it puts a lid on the discovery of new solutions and inventive solutions to problems. But sometimes giving the advice or giving the answer is just necessary. But what it really does is it says that you're the only answer to the issue. It's ego and it's identity. It's everything depends on me. I've got to give the answers. I've got to have all the right solutions to all the problems. But what if the business is so dependent on you? Let's say you want to sell your business. Hopefully you will sell your business one day. Well, let's say that the actions of the business are 75% dependent upon what you add to that business, because you're the only one that's coming up with the solutions. You're the only one that has the answers to the problems. You've taught people this is the way it needs to be done. There's this thing called a key person discount that happens. It's basically, if I'm going to buy your business, or you're going to buy my business, let's do it this way. You're going to buy my business. You come to me and you say, I want to buy your business for, say, well, what do you want for it? I say $1 million. And you look at all the numbers and you look at all the processes and you realize that 75% of everything that's happening is happening because of me. Well, now when I leave, I take 75% of the intellectual capital with me. I take 75% of the problem solving with me. I take 75% of the value away from the practice. So now instead of $1 million practice, I've got a $250,000 practice because of that key person discount. So what I'm creating here is learned dependence. If your team keeps coming to you with problems and you just keep solving them, what are you teaching them? You're teaching them, here's what you should do every single time there's a problem. Come to me. I'm going to fix this. I know all the answers. More sinisterly, or if that's a word, more dastardly, it's basically saying to them, you can't figure this out without me. And this creation of dependence, again, goes back to the need to be needed. There's a great couple of books. One's called The Coaching Habit, and the other is called The Advice Trap. It's written by a guy named Michael Bunyé-Stanier. And in it, he talks about giving advice too much. And what he came to the point of, it basically tells the people that are coming to you constantly, you're just not smart enough to figure this out without me. So when you start looking at the challenges that happen in your office, do you want to spend all your time solving problems, or would you rather create problem solvers within your business? I mean, that type of leadership helps people figure out solutions much better. But the other way stops people from even thinking for themselves. And all that turns into is you managing chaos, or me managing chaos. If also I'm the only one that's coming up with all the solutions, what would happen if I had to step away from my office for a period? Let's just say it's a week. Or let's say it's a month, or let's say it's an extended period. What would break first? And who's going to fix it? You're not there. So again, advice giving really says to your team, you're just not enough. I'm the holder of all the knowledge. I've got all the best ideas. There are no more better good ideas than what I have. So what should we do instead? Well, I do want to talk about that, but before we do, I want to have a little word from our sponsor, which today is me. Here at Vision Source Tifton, we are actively looking to add another doctor to our practice. When I first began practicing, I felt the tension that a lot of new grads and even doctors who've been wanting to start their own business kind of felt. I wanted to give great clinical work, but I was kind of burned out because I had no ability to make those decisions. There was a lot of pressure. The systems that were there left me feeling more like a cog in a wheel as opposed to the doctor that I really wanted to be. And for many people, that's the kind of life they live, and it crowds out family and relationships and community. Maybe you've been feeling the tension between professional growth and personal fulfillment. And you're thinking to yourself, I mean, can I have them both, or have I got to choose between the two? Well, here at Vision Source Tifton, we've been building something different. A practice that has high-level clinic abilities, deep relational, cultural feels, and it's rooted in the belief that you shouldn't have to choose between a meaningful life and a meaningful career. You can have both. If you're looking for a place where you can practice excellent optometry, care deeply for your guests, and still have margin for your family in a thriving small town, I'd love for you to come and see what we've built here. To get in touch with me, all you need to do is email me at tmcelroy, that's TMCELROY, at friendlycity.net. I'd love to have you come to Tifton. In fact, I'll bring you here. I'll show you what we have and give you a clear picture of what both your career path and your family's future would look like. Now, back to part one of Coaching as Leadership. So now that we see that giving out advice all the time is exhausting, it creates dependence on you rather than on the team, I want you to ask yourself a few questions here. How much of my day is spent reacting instead of leading? How many fires did I put out yesterday that shouldn't even be existing anymore? Am I leading or just managing chaos? If my leadership style stays the same way it does right now for the next 5 years, what is my practice going to look like? What am I going to look like? What would change if instead of giving answers all the time, I started asking questions? Experts say a better way to lead is by coaching. So really, what is the difference between giving advice and coaching? Because on the surface, they kind of look the same, but they are vastly different. Advice giving, as we kind of already established, is just telling people you know pretty much everything about a situation or topic, and you're the only arbiter of knowledge in there. Coaching, however, focuses on helping this person that's wrestling with an issue learn a better way to identify on their own a strategy to come up with a way to deal with that problem. Many times with a new or creative way that you probably never would have thought of on how to overcome that obstacle. But it's about staying curious a little bit longer, not just jumping in there with an answer. And I got to tell you, it is still hard for me. I had this problem happen to me today. We had a meeting in the optical. One of my team members was wanting to change some of our lines and the way we were doing it. And instead of me asking questions, I kind of started giving answers. And before I knew it, I was right in my trap. The advice monster had come out. And I stopped for a minute and I sort of circled back and I said, well, so really, what's the real issue here with what's going on? And she said, the real issue is we've got a couple of lines that just aren't producing. And they're just sitting on the board. And we need to make sure that we've got something that's taking care of the money that you're spending on all these frames. Great answer. Should have went there first. And then I said, so what would you like to do? And she had an answer. And I said, if you say yes to what you're planning on doing, what are you going to say no to? We sat there. Now, my dear friend and idol, Mike Rothschild, a great American, has a perfect answer for what happens when you ask a question and no one says a word. There is a scientific amount of time of how long you should wait. It's 7 seconds. May not be really scientific, but what happens in 7 seconds is usually if no one's answered, no one's going to answer. But usually if you wait 7 seconds, someone's going to get so uncomfortable, they're going to blurt out an answer. And in this case, she came back pretty quickly. This is exactly what I want to have happen. And then when we got to what are we saying no to, she didn't have an answer. She came back pretty quickly with, I don't know. So I said, well, what's your number one selling frame that's on the board right now? And she went off and got it. She brought it back to me. And we have a fulfillment method that we use called Frame Dream that Vision Source puts in front of us. And basically what happens is the best sellers stay on the frame board. I said, we got this particular frame that we're holding right here in my hand. This is the best seller that we've got in the office, right? She goes, yes. I said, okay, I've just sold it. And I put it on the counter behind me. I said, now what? Can I sell it again? And she said, no. I said, why not? She says, because we got to send it off to the lab to get them to put lenses in it. Exactly. So we've said no to selling our best seller. So that means we're going to have to maybe put more understock in there. That's going to cost us more money. And then she could start seeing some of the wheels turning in my head. Now, I don't have all the right answers about this, but I wanted her to think through the process of what we needed to do. And I think she's got a great strategy coming forward of how to fix this out. And in a couple of weeks, if it's going real well, maybe I'll do a podcast on that. We'll talk about this one too. But at the end, I ask a question that I really like to ask. And it's really the learning question for me. So what was most meaningful and helpful about this exchange? And she said, I knew you had my back on doing this, but I just wanted to make sure you were okay with doing this. But it was really nice knowing that you helped me think through the process and come up with better answers than I thought I was going to have in the first place. Again, it's about staying curious just a little bit longer before that advice monster comes out and just starts telling people what to do. Coaching builds autonomy, not dependence. Let me go back to the question I asked earlier. Do you want to solve problems all the time, or do you want to build problem solvers? How many times do we rob our team of coming up with a great answer by just jumping in too quickly? When you ask questions, you help discover possibilities of how a particular issue could be done differently. And I can't tell you how many times I thought I had the answer to the right problem, only to find out that I was giving bad advice for the wrong problem. And I really wasn't solving the problem at all. I was just making it worse. But when I took the time to dig in, kind of like I did with Kristen, to dig in a little further and ask more questions, the real challenge came to the surface and new opportunities came with it. Engaged leaders create thriving businesses, and that's how successful businesses do it. They engage their team. They're not just telling people what to do. They're creating autonomy and the feeling that people can do stuff. But sometimes there's other questions and other comments and other conversations that have got to take place. And so when you see challenges happen, what are some of the conversations that you find yourself putting off? And who are the people that you feel like you need to go talk to and ask questions? And what's the real reason you're avoiding having this engagement? Because engagement isn't always soft and cuddly. Sometimes it's a little prickly. Is it fear? Is it fatigue? Is it frustration? Is it time? I asked a group of really close friends who are our colleagues about how they felt about when it is that they kind of just put off talking about it. And this is what they said. Timing of when I say something, unfortunately, depends on available time. And typically, I'm busy enough that by the time I finish taking care of patients, my aggravation has passed and I'll let it go to start all over again later that week. Another person said, it's impossible to address it at the time that this person has done what they've done and they've moved on to a new person, new guest. And so I just compile a list for our leaders to address at a later time. And then the last comment that was made in this question was, honestly, most doctors just get beat down so bad about having to say things over and over again that they just look the other way. I identify with all three of those. And in the moment, sometimes that's not the best time to handle things. But it's got to happen, and it's got to be scheduled. And it's got to be on purpose to make it happen. Michael Hyatt, who I got to go through a coaching program with called the Business Accelerator, had a quote that I thought was great. He said, that which gets scheduled gets done. You've got to make time to have this coaching to take place. How much time should it take? I don't know. How much time do you think it needs to take? What should I do with that time? What needs to be said? Well, think about it more like this. What would it look like if you scheduled your leadership time the way you scheduled your guest care time? Now, I know what you're thinking. What is really in this for all? What all of this is really for me? How does this all work for me? So how much of your life is stress that's self-created by the way you lead? What would your life look like if you had your team solving more of your problems, more of the practice problems, more of their problems, than you having to solve their problems? What could you do with all the time and energy and creativity that you have inside you if you weren't constantly firefighting? Would you or your team feel more like a cog in the wheel of a system or part of the solution to the hurdles of the business as it faces them? probably the most important question, going back to the ego question, would I rather be needed or would I rather be free? Would I rather be needed or would I rather be free? So coaching moves you more in a direction of asking questions like, so what do you think is the next best step? What kind of options have you considered? When you're looking at this challenge, what do you think the end result should look like? Given the things that you've experienced in the past, what you're currently undergoing, and where you want this process to go, what do you think is the wise, not the right thing, but what is the wise thing to do? Because the right thing's not always the wise thing to do. How do you know that you're even on the right track when you're going through this process? What kind of things do you know that tell you you're heading in the right direction? These kind of questions lead to ownership of the problem. It gives confidence. It's internally motivating. I can't tell you how exciting it is to watch people blossom into these people you know that they are. It says you're capable of figuring this stuff out. I'm just here to bring it out of you. I'm just here to help you figure out what this next system looks like, but you have the answers. You've got all the right solutions. So as we've gone through this today and we start thinking about what's going to happen in our next episode, I got a few questions I want you to ponder. What part of this episode made you feel a little uncomfortable? And why did it make you feel like that? What truth are you tempted to resist when it comes to doing this? What's a leadership habit that you need to unlearn? And what's a coaching habit that you need to build? As we go forward with this podcast series, we're going to help leaders learn how to ask great questions. We're going to teach you how to stay curious a little bit longer, not just by counting the 7 in your head. We're going to help you see what your teammates already have inside of them that's just waiting to get out. We're also going to help you discover a coaching mindset that grows a whole person, not again through control or advising or rescuing, but through coaching. You've already got enough to do. You need to create a business that could run without you, that frees you up to do all the things that only you can do. How exciting would that be? Your business runs successfully without you. What could you do with your time? What could you do with your energy? What could you do with your money? We're also going to help you build some practical tools on engaging your team consistently. Businesses that avoid engagement, those are the ones that are losing people and momentum, and it's eroding their culture. So we're going to help with scripts, questions and frameworks and examples, because engaged leadership grows your people and your business. So a little teaser for our next episode. In our next episode, we're going to talk about the single biggest barrier there is to coaching. It's how well do you really know the people that you work with? I mean, you think you know them, but how deeply do you truly know them? And the episode is called, Do You Know Who Works With You? And this may be one of the most transformative leadership shifts that you'll ever make. If you want a thriving business, you've got to have engagement with your team. You can't lead with the office door closed. Coaching requires that we change ourselves and our team and our profession. If you'd like to know more about this, we've got a white paper. You can go to the end of this episode and see the link. It'll be icodemedia.com/vision coaching, and it will get you the leadership whole person coaching white paper. This has been the first part of Coaching as Leadership series, where we're going to grow our people by learning to coach the whole person, not just the employee. That's going to help you grow your business. I am so excited that you were here with me today, and I can't wait to talk to you about the next episode. Thank you.